Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for standing by. Welcome to the STG Service as a Service webinar. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. If you should need assistance during the call, please press *0 on your telephone keypad, and an operator will come back online to assist you. Thank you. I would now like to turn the conference over to Ashlyn Hale. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. My name is Ashlyn Hale, and I'm with Tech Data. Just want to go over a few housekeeping things for this webinar. We're going to be holding all questions to the end. You will notice on the right-hand side of your screen, though, there is a Q&A portion that you can type into, and you are more than welcome to type any questions throughout the webinar that you have, and we will get to those all at the end. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Zepper, who is going to be doing the webinar for us.
Thank you, Ashlyn. Hey, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We recognize that you have a choice in how you spend your time and that you prioritize those things that are most important, and by attending today, you are demonstrating a commitment to us. So, which we look to return by making this webinar informative, but more importantly, valuable to you in the context of your business. We appreciate the fact that you're choosing to spend your time with us. So typically, if you attend a webinar like this, it's usually to think about your business, learn about new ideas, discover trends in the industry, or find ways to work on your business and not in your business. In the environment of this presentation, we know that there's not time to get to know each other, but typically you want to make a quick evaluation of whether what we talk about could work for your business or make a positive impact to your organization. You'll want to know, what do we do, how do we do it, how do you make money, and a host of other questions. So my ask is, during or after the session, if you like what you hear, you just send me an email. You see my email up on the screen, expressing your interest, and I will have the appropriate Tech Data Services rep reach out to you directly, and then you can have a much more deeper, rich dialogue about your business specifically and potential fit with Tech Data Services as a service. Alternatively, you can also contact your data rep to facilitate this dialogue. And if you don't like what you hear or it's not a fit for your business, that's fine, that's okay too. In fact, I would appreciate, again, any feedback you have as to why you don't believe it's a benefit to your company. Again, during or after this presentation, feel free to send me an email. As Ashlyn mentioned, I'm Aaron Zepper. I'm a Vice President at STG, which is a tech data company. I lead our sales and professional services organization, and I'll be leading our discussion today. So we'll go to the agenda. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to break the time up into two main components, a presentation and then a free-flowing question and answer period. As Ashlyn mentioned, feel free to type your questions in at any moment. She'll be collecting those, and then we'll be going over those at the end of the presentation. The presentation will start with some of the most popular questions solution providers have. We'll go over the different STG service offerings, what the benefits are to you, what are some different service maturity models, where do you fit in that, as well as then a couple of VARs very similar to yourself and how we've worked with them. So what do solution providers usually want to know? So just put a whole bunch of questions up here that typically we get engaged in most every dialogue, which is, what is services as a service? How do I make money? How much does it cost? Do I have to invest anything? Why do clients need it? What problems do you solve? Why are other companies like myself interested? Do you have any examples? How do I, well, what exactly does STG do? And why did, I don't understand, why did Tech Data buy STG? So I'd like to start with the last question, which is, why did Tech Data buy STG? So STG was acquired on June 1st, 2015. We are a wholly owned tech data company operating as a standalone entity, and we were bought primarily because of VAR demand, meaning that numerous VARs and solution providers have been asking Tech Data to provide additional value-added services. There's been a great growth of services in the market. Clients in the market continue to demand more choices for services. It suggests as a category, services continues to grow faster than the product company. And finally, companies like yourselves needing to transform. And more VARs are finding it that their business must expand services to grow or to maintain margin contribution. The financials of running a solution provider continue to change and change quickly. And based off that feedback, Tech Data knew that they needed to grow their services presence and the different types of services that they could enable their solution providers to provide to their end user clients. So that's great, but what does STG do? So STG is primarily a data center services company, and when we talk about the data center, we're going to talk about 4 different components to the data center, and it'll tie into 4 separate offerings that we have. The first component is equipment. So every data center, whether it's owned in a colo facility, it's hosted, or some sort of combination, has physical equipment powering that data center. This includes mainframe, servers, storage, and many other hardware platforms. For the equipment in data centers, STG offers maintenance. Maintenance is typically warranty coverage for the equipment in the data center, and typically happens once the OEM warranty lapses. This is critical for a data center, as without the operation of the physical infrastructure, there's no data center. There's no delivery of applications for productivity. The business stops. It would maintain and provide flexible SLAs and coverage models to best fit your client's needs. To give you a quick example, one area we see this happen quite frequently is, imagine you have a customer who is planning to refresh their NetApp environment to EMC. However, the refresh is going to take place for 6 months. You are displacing the VAR who sold the NetApp gear into the client, and their warranty coverage on the NetApp equipment expires in a month. The client can go ahead and renew the warranty with NetApp through the other VAR, keeping that VAR entangled with the customer that you're trying to displace. The client will also need to then go pay for a full year of warranty, potentially pushing back that hardware refresh. And again, NetApp now remains tied to the customer. So in a case like this, we often see partners come in there with an STG maintenance agreement for the client to cover his NetApp equipment until the refresh. You eliminate the conversation with NetApp directly, so now you've got a better seat for EMC and yourself to come in. You've removed the reseller in the process, and by the way, you've given the client a more flexible contract where he pays for the coverage he needs for 6 months versus the year. So next within the data center, we see there's a whole host of roles and responsibilities that people perform. It is the people that bring the different technical expertise to operate the data center, includes engineers, architects, administrators, and a host of other roles. So for technical expertise, STG offers staff augmentation services. We bring in specific expertise for the roles and responsibilities to ensure the operations of the data center is maintained and optimized. Another example here would be, let's say you have a client who's planning to migrate from a Microsoft SQL environment to an Oracle MySQL environment. And the current DBA finds out about this, starts to search for a new job, and leaves. So your client doesn't necessarily want to bring in a SQL expert when they're going to make this move in 3 months or 4 months and have to train somebody or get them acclimated to a new environment. So what they can do is instead, via you as the VAR, we can bring on a SQL person for the transition period and then let the customer find the right long-term person that has the correct MySQL skills for the long term. So also in the data center, there's a whole host, so in addition to the equipment, the people, there's a whole host of activities and things that occur. Activities outside of the day-to-day operation. They include hardware installations, equipment moves, the implementation of new applications, the migration from one version to another version of applications, the optimization of the data center. Basically all the things that are constantly changing within the data center. And so for many of the changes in the data center and the IT activities, we offer professional services. These professional services assume the disruption, allow the client's organization to stay focused on the day-to-day operations and eliminating the need for a client to learn or develop skills for these non-recurring events and activities. This also offers them maximum flexibility and on-demand expertise so that they can focus on their core business. And again, one of the things I'd ask is that you think of these in the context of yourself as a solution provider and having STG filling in where there's additional need or opportunity within your customers where you're not providing those services today. The services that we perform here include physical implementation. So physical deployment, whether that's server, storage, any of the physical assets, software migration. We stay focused on prevailing technologies. So what that means is we'll help customers with their software migration, whether that's Microsoft, VMware, Citrix, Veritas, many of the major OEMs and publishers. We also perform data center relocations, which seems to occur quite frequently with a number of companies utilizing co-location facilities, setting up multiple DR sites or disaster recovery sites, and trying to get equipment and data into various geographic locations. And finally, in addition to and what I would say here too is in professional services, this is the one area we step outside of the data center. So in addition to the physical deployment of hardware in the data center, we also extend the physical implementation into end user compute environments. So whether that's laptops, desktops, tablets, we'll also perform deployments, image migrations, migrate user data, et cetera, in those end user environments. Final component to us in the data center is the overall strategy that a company has for their data center. That strategy can include vision, roadmaps for the future, project prioritization, what changes are most important. And for strategy, we offer consulting services. Our consulting services are focused on backup storage, virtualization in cloud, and data center migration. So now that I understand what STG does, how do I actually make money? Well, what I'd like to do is just show us some specific examples that, of what the service offering is, quick description, as well as then what our cost to you is, and then a suggested resale price to your client with the margin. So I'm going to look at two different examples here. The first one is a Microsoft Exchange example. So let's say that you have a client who's interested in going from, has about 140 Exchange users on 2003 and wants to migrate to Office 365. We believe that that market rate for that is about $100 per seat for a two-step migration. Our price to you would be about $74 a seat, which translates into about 24% margin for yourself. Now, if you don't believe that you as a solution provider can sell it at $100 per seat, then again, we're probably not a good fit for you, or not a good fit for the way that your model works and the relationships you have. But if you do think you can, which is typically what we see in the market, then again, this is something where you can go resell our services and make about a 24% margin. Likewise, I'm going to go down to the deployment area under desktop, laptop, hardware, software install. So for a typical desktop installation, including hardware and software, but not user data, you're looking at a cost of around $23 a desktop. Again, this may vary depending on circumstances, but we believe that you should be able to sell for that to about $30 a desktop, or 30+% markup, or 23 points to gross profit. So overall, what we find is solution providers that are using our white label services should expect between 15 to 30 points of margin, again, depending upon what the service is, depending upon how aggressive you want to be, depending upon different market variables, et cetera, but somewhere between 15 and 30 points of margin. So that's great, you say, but how much time and money do I need to invest? So from an initial investment perspective, we don't ask for anything up front. So there's no need for you to build a practice. There's no need for you to invest in pre-sales support, administration. Really, you'll have to invest some time, though, and conversations with your client. So how long does it usually take to go from I'm interested in selling services to I'm actually selling services? Well, the answer to that is it really depends. And it's tough to give a specific answer, primarily because we've seen with some partners and solution providers that we'll have a conversation, and within an hour we're on the phone with one of their customers talking about a solution and bringing services into the environment of a client. Sometimes it takes months, maybe even a year, and it depends on a number of factors. It depends on your business model today. Do you sell services today? Do you have some immediate hardware sales that need additional services to go along with it? What types of services do you sell today? Are your customers used to transacting services with you? And a whole host of other things. So how does STG improve your business? Well, over and over, we see really three challenges that continue to come up where we're able to assist. So the first one is a VAR who wants to be able to increase their geographic reach. I'm located in New York City. My client just acquired a company located out of Atlanta. They want me to come in and do a few desktop replacements. Fortunately, I don't have any people there. How do I do that without turning them to another solution provider? So you can bring STG in to help expand your geographic reach. Expand service offerings. Today I have a networking practice. I occasionally get customers asking me about infrastructure and can I help them virtualize. I don't really have any architects or engineers that are well-versed in VMware. Something I may want to get into, but I don't want to invest in people today. Can you help me now? So we help people expand their services offering. And finally, utilize variable workforce. Hey, I'm so far behind on all my virtualization projects. If I could just offload some of those, I could get a faster throughput, more velocity, and get to additional projects at my customer, or I won't force them to look to another solution provider in order to meet their timeline. And when VARs are able to do that, VARs reap the benefits in a few different ways. One is, most importantly, is they increase their client entanglement and retention. It creates an opportunity to further expand within your clients with a limited investment and generates incremental revenue, gross profit, and conversion rates in your business. And let's not forget about the clients. What do the clients get? Well, your clients will end up with a single source solution, being able to turn to you as a trusted advisor and know that they can rely on you for on-demand technical expertise and experience. So what matters to solution providers and companies like you? Well, in our conversation, we've had a number of conversations over the last number of years as we've worked with solution providers, and we continue to hear many of the same things come up over and over. We call these the things that matter, and they range in 4 categories: from trust and relationship, the skilled people and extension of the team, communication engagement, and what's the services benefit. So we'll talk first about trust and relationship. So I recognize this is something that can only be generated over time, but clients tell us that being in business for over 25 years with multiple partner reseller relationships at greater than 7 years demonstrates our commitment and focus to our reputation. And we believe that being part of the Tech Data family, a Fortune 100 company, even illustrates that more greatly. Again, this isn't something you can just put up on a slide and believe. It's something that you'll have to experience by working with us directly. Skilled people and extension of the team. We realize that our people are going to be a direct reflection of your organization, and you're going to want to know that the team is skilled and professional. So from the individuals on our team, we have hundreds of certifications, vast amounts of experience, and most importantly, we bring our people to our environments. So, and the client's timelines and the challenges. Most everyone that works here worked at some point for a solution, providing these same services directly to end users. And so we recognize how important the end user, the way that what we do reflects upon you every step of the way. And that's why we hear over and over that communication is imperative. The reason most often from our partners is why they do business with us. If you went and talked to solution providers that do business with us today, their response usually, we respond quickly and honestly. So we're a pretty flat organization. We're proactive. It's easy to get a hold of here. We're going to communicate proactively with you, which allows you then to convey the messages to your client. And finally, at the end of the day, there must be a benefit to your client. And what we hear consistently is clients continue to look to offload different amounts of IT environment, that they're constantly changing their environment. There's always new technology, and our services will do as a solution provider there to pick up that work and further entangle yourself with their IT organization, IT operations. So what type of partner can help? What I'd like to show here is a quick little maturity chart that we use a lot of times and ask that you start thinking in terms of your own business. Now, again, these are guidelines, and it's more of a model than it is hard and fast. but typically we definitely see a maturity to the types of partners and how they engage and what types of services they use, and we'll go into that in the next slides. But it starts with where you are. And so from our perspective, in our experience, there seems to be three main categories of maturity. You're going to be somewhere along this line. It may not be hard and fast, like I said, but typically we find the first level is if your services revenue as an organization is less than 5%, typically we see that you're primarily in a resale business model. There's not a lot of rep maturity when it comes to selling services. You probably don't have any practices established, and pre-sales, you probably don't have a dedicated pre-sales team. For the next wave of partners we see is this in-between stage where partners are selling services or solutions in addition to reselling hardware and software. And typically their revenue from services ranges somewhere between 5 and 20%. They do have pre-sales. It's on an ad hoc basis as reps reach out and deals start to coalesce and come together. People reach out, bring in pre-sales. Typically you'll have a practice or two and you're starting to get a little bit more mature. The reps have some level of skill and experience in dealing with selling services and engaging it within the process. And again, we'll show kind of how these maturity models translate into some different areas of where we offer help and which services typically we see partners start with in the upcoming slide. And finally, we see partners that have greater than 20% of their services revenue as being very focused on business outcomes and solutions. They typically have a good handle on practices. They have a number of them established. The reps and the pre-sales is very highly engaged in service sales. And in fact, all the services pre-sales is integrated into the sales process. So again, typically you'll find yourself somewhere on this continuum, and based off that, we would have different recommendations of what's the best way to engage, as well as what services we would recommend that you start with. So let's turn to thinking about this maturity model in what areas is STG. So across the board, whether you've never sold services before or you're well established, we provide the pre-sales. So if you don't have a pre-sales organization, our team is happy to do the pre-sales for you. If you have a pre-sales, if you're further along the right and you have a pre-sales process or you start the pre-sales process, we're absolutely flexible and willing to do that. And again, if you're interested, send me an email. We'll have someone reach out to you. And these will be the kind of conversations that we get specifically, is how to work together and how to make this successful based off the structure of your business and the structure of your clients today. You know, again, it always starts with a pre-sales ability. Next it moves into delivery resources. So again, depending from delivery resources, we have delivery resources and plug into what you have, or we'll make recommendations and show you how to build your practices from ground up. Typically, once people start to incorporate delivery resources into their own payroll, then there becomes a need for increased geographic coverage. So going back to my example earlier, where you have a client or where you're based in New York, I've got delivery resources, I've got pre-sales ability, I've got this deal, I already know it's one, I just need somebody to help me deliver another geo area. Again, something we can easily snap into. What about tools and processes? Well, if you don't have any, we're happy to share ours with you, let you leverage those, start to implement those. If you have tools and processes, again, we can snap into those and or provide feedback that maybe of ways that you haven't thought about that may improve your business and the tools and processes used today. And typically once we get beyond that, you know, we're happy to participate in it, but we typically see partners then having dedicated individuals that start to own the intellectual maturity and the intellectual property that you have and develop into ultimately where you begin focusing more on transformation within your business. So again, taking this maturity, which services should I start with? Well, again, this will be stuff that you need to, it's not hard and fast. Some partners have different client sets. Some partners are focused in different verticals. have different types of relationships, and we'll make some suggestions and recommendations as we go. But typically, we see it starting with maintenance or some sort of break-fix service. This is really just a technical service and usually just snaps into the way you're supporting your customer today. Next, we see solution providers moving into professional services, specifically end-user hardware deployment. So if you're already selling the servers, you're already selling the laptops, how do I then just take it the next step, which is I'm going to start imaging them and I'm going to start deploying them. I'm going to go rack and stack them and get them on the network, get them into your data center, get them into your colo facility. Again, very easy to integrate into a product sales motion if that's where you're at. The next level, we often see staffing. Again, it doesn't require a lot of technical expertise, doesn't take a lot of ownership of end deliverables. It does require you to work oftentimes with additional decision makers, and so that would be a new step for many of the solution providers out there. But and then the next step is really where I think you can really take off as a solution provider in the services arena. That is with software migrations, data center deployments, application implementations, and this is really where you start to get comfortable creating outcomes. You start to move into these larger scale projects, and you have services now that are touching the infrastructure and the operational livelihood of your clients. So this is where we really look at a kind of a transitional point, and once you're able to do professional services, have the conversations about the business outcomes, and you're touching the company's infrastructure and their livelihood, you've officially made the transition to a solution provider or a services organization. And again, then we often see further on down the line, different solution providers then creating specialized practices that require usually more investment, greater expertise, greater knowledge, but really separate you from your peers. And then finally, consulting offerings as well as you continue to broaden your depth of knowledge, providing advisory services for clients. So again, we can help you along any one of those stair steps in different capacities. Again, it'll be based off your maturity, your business model, what clients you're working with today. So knowing that this is targeted towards public sector organizations, you probably want to know, well, how does STG help in the public sector? So we'll talk about three things real quickly, which is contracts, clearances, and bids. So from a contracts perspective, we have experience with many of the different classifications that you and your peers have, whether that's a minority-owned business, you're an 8A, you have a service-disabled, veteran-owned business, many of the other classifications that range by state and or national organization. So we do support clients like that today, and I'll give you an example here in a few moments. We do have vehicle experience, so whether that's working off the GSA schedule, it's working off SUP contracts, our team is familiar with it. We have a support organization in the back that can ensure compliance, ensure that we meet reporting requirements, et cetera. Knowing that in many cases there's different requirements that you have, and we can provide some feedback. Will it be across all government vehicles? Absolutely not. But with many of the larger ones, we have experience and can help guide you and or provide feedback or our experiences. From a clearances perspective, if individuals need to have secret clearance, that's something we can help with. If it's top secret, we've helped in the past, but I'm going to tell you it's a lot more limited. And what about from a bids perspective? So we participate with many different solution partners in bids, and we have the ability to assist you. We will not write the bid. So if you're looking for somebody like to turn over a bid, hey, can we go after this together? We're absolutely willing to be responsible for the technical portion and the portion that relates to our services, but we will not fill out the entire bid. And we'll typically, again, depending upon the bid, we'll want to know things from you. You know, what kind of demonstrated advantage do you have that makes this winning more likely than, say, just a complete blind bid? Are you doing business with that agency today, with that county, et cetera? Do you have registration from the hardware and you're going and partnered with the manufacturer? Again, a lot of the questions, we'll want to ensure that we're working together and jointly pursuing this, and that there's investment from both sides and likelihood to win from both sides. So what does this all mean? So the title of the webinar was Services as a Service. I'd like to start real briefly with, well, what does as a service mean? So we've all heard of software as a service, platform, infrastructure. And what I've done is taken some of the key bullets from the NIST definition of service, or of as a service, that you may be familiar with. So typically for something to qualify as a service, it's on-demand self-service. You have a broad network access. There's the ability to pool resources. You have the ability to expand rapidly, or there's rapid elasticity, and there's some sort of measured service component to it. So when we say, what is service as a service, we very much align to that type of definition. And so specifically, what you get with service as a service is we're available on demand. There's no upfront investment. You pay for what you use. Very similar there. There's the ability for rapid elasticity. So if you need to scale up on a project and you only need a short burst for a couple months, we're absolutely able to help. We can do it across a broad portfolio of services. And then there's measured service, meaning that we have defined deliverables and SLAs within which we live by. So, we believe that there's only one distributor with this model. That's Tech Data with STG. And you're now able to use that. Now you're now able to use distribution as your third party services as a service, service as a services provider. So finally, I'd like to go through just a couple of quick examples for you. One is a VAR located in the Beltway. It's a Maryland-based company focused on federal business, and just show you how this has worked with a few others. So it originally started by doing a single maintenance contract for a federal agency. Again, not a lot of sophistication needed to sell that, more of responding to a bid, very well defined. That led into a number of installations and deinstallations in Department of Defense facilities throughout the country. So once you're now in you're in their data center, you're providing maintenance, you've got the appropriate clearances. They ask, what else can you do? So you won the bid. Now we're doing ad hoc installation and deinstallations at various facilities. That led into a large growth in the next harvest season for all types of federal clients with dozens of maintenance contracts. Again, the partners started to get more used to this, started looking for it, started asking questions with their current federal agency clients, and that's also then led into a number of dynamic staffing opportunities where different agencies need staff for defined periods of time, oftentimes wrapped around peaks and valleys in their activity in their data centers. So how does this work with other VARs since we've been part of Tech Data? I'm going to show one quick example of one partner we've worked with and how it kind of came to be, and a timeline also with that. So this is a relatively large Midwestern VAR that had a number of existing services practices, so pretty well versed in the services sales. In the previous example, that company had 0 services sales prior to working with us. So they were starting from ground zero. This one, we were contacted on July 13th by the strategic account executive from Tech Data. By the next day, we already had an initial staff augmentation opportunity. Within about a week, we were doing a presentation to their executive team. They wanted to know where we could do this. Then they wanted to arrange a meeting between the CEO and STG. Then that led into intro call to all their regional vice presidents about different services and ways we go to market. Within 2 weeks, there was a half dozen opportunities working. Within 2 weeks of that initial staff augmentation deal, which was for SharePoint Consulting, the deal was already closed, person starting at the beginning of August. Then we won a deal with them and an end user for helping the client deploy routers and switches to 10 different remote locations. As we were getting ready to launch that project, the client actually canceled the project. So again, we'll work through those things with you. It doesn't always work out to be, the perfect scenario, but there were some timing issues with the client and didn't realize that initially the VAR had passed on the opportunity. Then we went back to re-engage and said we could do that opportunity once they've learned about STG. Unfortunately, a different part of their company had already decided a different way to solve that problem. But within about a month, we were doing, this company also does some hosting. So they started to utilize us for maintenance on their own disaster recovery equipment. And again, within, right about a month, we were also engaged in another Citrix migration project that we won, and we've done, a half dozen projects with them. So one example of R that has some services practices, we're able to get engagement quickly and start to win some opportunities. So who do you work with? We have a whole host of individuals that are in the different territories throughout the country. And these would be the individuals, like I said, that I would like to arrange time for you. If this sounds like something that could be of interest to you, it sounds like something that could be valuable to your business, please reach out to me and I'll connect you directly with the associated services rep. Likewise, you can reach out to your tech data rep and they'll also be able to help there. So with that, I conclude the formal presentation. I just want to, again, reiterate, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to the tech data rep. We'll be able to facilitate a individual conversation, get much more deeply into your business, where you see potential fit, what you want to know more about, where you could use help in at least just abstractly figuring out where services fit in your organization. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ashlyn, who's going to present a few of the questions that have been starting to queue up in the Q&A portion.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, so we have a few questions that came in. The first one is, where do you perform delivery services?
So most of our deliveries in the U.S., we do double-digit percentage of our business in Canada, but typically we perform delivery services every state in the U.S., pretty much every major metropolitan area, and have the ability to cover, feel pretty securely that anywhere in the U.S. will provide services. And then when it comes to Canada, we primarily do work in the major cities. So they use the term the CFL, Canadian Football League. I guess there's, and so most of the major cities of Canada we cover as well.
All right, and the next one is, what % of your overall business comes from the staff augmentation placement?
Yeah, a great question. That is about, I would say, approximately 15% of our business. 35, and just to expand on it, 35% of our business is in the pro services area, and about 50% of it comes from maintenance and managed services.
What part of partner is the best fit for you? Or I'm sorry, what type of partner is the best fit for you?
That's a tough question to answer. I'll kind of reiterate something I said earlier. I mean, we have partners of all types. So we have some that are very large, some that are, a couple people, only employ a couple people. And it really depends on what their business model is and their desire to sell services and or provide solutions and or business outcomes to their clients. So if you're focused on growing margin, growing your entanglement with your clients, and you have good relationships or the ability to ask difficult questions, those are the types of partners that seem to work best with. If the model's more of we just respond to bids and we don't really talk to our clients, those types of solution providers, we usually have a really tough time finding a fit.
And next one is, why would I sell maintenance when I am trying to generate more product sales?
Yeah, so again, it can seem counterintuitive sometimes to keep equipment in a data center longer than the initial warranty period, but we find it's a handful of reasons. One is, clients typically are keeping their equipment longer than the initial 3-year warranty, so that's one. So they're doing something with it after that, whether they're using another solutions company to provide that service or it's you, that's one aspect of it. Secondly, when you take ownership of the maintenance and the warranty of the equipment, what you end up doing is selfishly you become the first person to know what their plans are. when they're planning on decommissioning something, when something's going out of the environment, and that puts you in the primary driver's seat oftentimes to bid on the new equipment that's coming in. So you'll usually know because they'll have to give notice to end any of their maintenance contracts, because we provide them a 30-day notification period, which means that they're going to have to notify you 30 days before they're going to take the equipment out, which every time gives you the opportunity to ask them what they're replacing it with or put you into the driver's seat for driving a conversation around the new equipment. So counterintuitively, it allows you to it may not be generating product sales at that point in time, but it allows you to be the one that gets first notification when the time comes for the hardware refresh.
Next question is, can I order your services from ShopTech Data? ShopTech Data.
So the answer to that is we're working on that right now. So there are a few different deployment SKUs that are loaded into shoptechdata.com right now. Those are live and you can order them. We're working with the team to add a few others in there and to get a little bit more descriptive on those. So the answer is yes. And as you work through that, or if you have any feedback for us, we're open to the feedback and we want to improve that experience for you and make it easier and easier for you to conduct business that way.
Okay. And then what happens if you learn of other projects or needs while delivering the service?
Yeah, so great question, because this is one of the things I think that one of the advantages of using a company like ours. So if we go in there to do projects or we're delivering services on your behalf, any kind of feedback we get, whether that is the engineer saw 20 new servers coming in, that is, hey, I was in the lunchroom and I heard them talking about they're looking at standing up a new disaster recovery facility. Whatever kind of feedback we get, we capture those with our project management team as the project goes on, and all of those opportunities or pieces of information get routed back to you directly for you to take action on.
All right, and I've got one last question up here, and just a reminder to anybody out there that you guys can type any more questions you have down in the right-hand corner for the Q&A section, and we will get to those. The last question is, who manages the projects?
So we have a project management team, and we will typically manage the project. Again, if you have a robust project management service or a project management office in your organization and you want us to integrate into your own process, we'll do that. But you can rest assured that any of the services we do, we will take ownership of the project management of it. If that's something that you prefer to do yourself or you have an alternate way or recommendations for us, we can be flexible and integrate into your process.
Is there any more questions? I haven't seen any come through. Give it one more minute. All right, I haven't seen any other questions come through. We wanted to thank you guys for attending the webinar, and I'm going to turn it back to our hosts for the webinar.
Ronnie, that's it.
Thank you for tuning in to today's webinar. You may now disconnect.